Welcome, everyone, PTB Wrestling Junkies, to this week's episode of the NWA Saturday Special. I am your co-host, Scott Criscolo. Joining me, as always, the Doctor, Dr. G. Giorgio Bellino. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. Yes, it's a very sad time in the wrestling world.
Yeah, as you can tell, we're not as peppy and obnoxious as we normally are to open our shows. We're a little melancholy. For those, we've been watching wrestling a long time, and things happen, deaths happen, and we lost another one from our childhood this week. It was, I think, Wednesday morning. We found out at the age of 60, just 60 years old, we lost the other half of what I consider, and I know my co-host considers, the greatest tag team to ever walk up an aisle anywhere in the world, and that is, of course, Joe Laurinaitis, a.k.a. Road Warrior Animal, who passed away at the age of 60. Of course, can you believe this? Next month, it'll be 17 years that Road Warrior Hawk passed away in October of 2003. That one, sadly, we all kind of knew from in and out that something was amiss there. And if you watch the early 03, I mean, it didn't look that bad in the early 03 TNA when him and Animal were there. I mean, he didn't look as bad as like Kurt Hennig did. Kurt Hennig looked like he had one foot in the grave, and in February of 03, he would. But he looked terrible. Hawk actually didn't look that bad, but he would pass away.
Well, Hawk, I think
October.
He had just gotten married. I think he was moving into a new place. I think when he had passed, I guess he wasn't feeling well, and I believe that because Animal or Joe Laurinaitis was a Christian, and I think he got Hawk to kind of come around, like some of those guys like Sting and Ted DiBiase, to find Christ, and he and so I think he was getting in a good place, so which he hadn't been in for a while, and I know that the Animal took that really hard. He had some trials and tribulations. He's spoken on his podcast before. It wasn't always some easy times when they were teaming together. And then when Hawk went over to Japan and started was it
Power Warriors, I think?
Something like that.
Yeah. With
I think they had their ups and downs. Obviously as friends, and Hawk was very eccentric and a big partier, and believe it or not, Animal wasn't. I'm sure he had his times, but he wasn't to the extent that Hawk was. But this was much of a surprise. I mean, I was just listening to his podcast last week, and just so full of life, and loves doing the autograph signings, and he was excited about going to Jerry Lawler's 50th anniversary on the 26th of September. And I was shocked. I was shocked
today.
Actually, I didn't even. Did you tell me? I forget. I got a text.
Me. It was me that told you.
It was you. Okay. Because
I saw it on Twitter.
Friends texted us as well, so that's why I was trying to remember.
Yeah. I saw it on Twitter. Hulk Hogan posted something on Twitter, and then I guess Tommy Dreamer confirmed it a short time later. A Power Warrior was, so what happened was, just to clarify, well, let's talk about their career real quick. Yes, we are going to do a recap of the second episode of UWM Primetime Live this week. We are going to get to that, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Dr. G's and my favorite tag team ever. You can call this the Superstar Spotlight, if you will, for this week, but with Animal going now, Heaven's pay-per-view is getting better and better. So obviously, and now, little trivia question here for you, Doctor. Eddie Starkey had that crew of guys in that St. Paul, Minneapolis area that he trained. It was 4 guys. 3 of them are now dead. Can you remember who the 4th one was? He's still alive.
He's still alive?
Yeah, the 4th guy is still alive. There were 4 guys.
Well, Crusher Khrushchev.
Correct. You got it right. Barry Darsow. Crusher Khrushchev, of course.
I'm using Crusher Khrushchev because I'm on Crock and Roll, where
Oh yeah, no, he's
prevalent in 1985, so that's why it was going on.
He was Demolition Smash. He was whatever the hell he was, Repo Man, and all those others. The rest of that crew, of course, were both Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, and of course, Ravishing Rick Rude was also in that bunch too. And then the Road Warriors would start in Georgia. Animal was alone at first, and then Ole paired him up with Mike. They had known each other. And they formed the Road Warriors in 1983. So there's one thing Ole can get credit for, that miserable prick that he put together the Road Warriors. They were initially brought into Precious Paul Ellering's stable as a replacement for his team of Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson after Bourne was fired. After a few months of rapid success, the Road Warriors dumped Ellering as manager, claiming they needed no manager. This was short-lived. As in early 84, Ellering formed a stable called the Legion of Doom.
Yeah, Jake the Snake was in that.
Yep, and the Spoiler with the Road Warriors. The stable was short-lived. Legion of Doom soon referred only to the Road Warriors and Ellering. Of course, that would be interchanged back and forth. Legion of Doom, Road Warriors, depending on what promotion. Probably some of my favorite Road Warriors moments, and if you have the DVD that the WWF put out in late or mid 2000s, I think. Yeah, because it was after Hawk died, so it was like 2004. I think it was like 2005, 2006. I think my favorite Road Warrior matches are when you watch them in Georgia. They just run in. They have the black pads, and they run in, and I don't even think they have pads yet. I think they had like leather chaps. They look like Judas Priest. I think they had leather chaps and leather, they had
that more motorcycle guy.
Yeah,
motorcycle gang
cuts,
look,
like leather vests, and they throw the shit off, and then you'd see these two fucking stiffs, George South or one of these fucking losers, and you knew that they literally were about to get their fucking lunch handed to them. It's like, yeah, good, congratulations on making your $100 on your $100 today. By the way, you're about to have your fucking intestines fed to you. And then the Road Warriors will come in and they just fucking destroy. I mean, there wouldn't be like any, give the ring announcer a chance to say something. I mean, they just fucking just pounded them into dirt.
They were just something
it was
unlike
to watch.
It was something unlike that you've never seen before. You obviously didn't see that in the WWF at that time, or WWF, and you didn't see that really in any company. And then just to have these two, massive guys just pop onto the scene, and they were very green. I mean, in those days, they didn't usually didn't get a shot like that, basically right out of the box.
Right, exactly.
They put those guys together and they made them dominant right away. I mean, I believe they just gave them the national tag team belts, right? They didn't win their first national tag team belts, or they may have only held it one time, but wasn't it
4 times? Yeah, it says here their high impact power style and unique attire quickly got them noticed by fans and dreaded by opponents, so much so that some wrestlers would grab their bag and leave the arena when they saw they were scheduled to face them. In Georgia, the team quickly rose to the top despite being very young without the traditional paying dues period, just because they were so believable in their role as power monsters. They gained a reputation for being very stiff and not selling simply because they could, and as a result, most of their matches ended quickly. They won the NWA National Tag Team titles upon their debut, a title they would win 3 more times in Georgia. So
they did beat a team for the belts, right?
Yeah.
I may be mistaken with somebody else, but
I
just remember them bursting onto the scene really quick and just becoming this dominant tag team right out of the chute. I mean, the only other people I could really say that or one person that was kind of like them was like Kurt Angle, winning all those belts real fast,
right?
In the WWF. I mean, even
though
though
it was handed to them. It was handed to them. New Year's Day, 1983. The Samoans had the belts. They refused to defend against Tommy Rich and Paul Orndorff, but in reality, they had left and headed up to New York. So on June 11th, 83, the Road Warriors won a fictitious tournament. Then they held them for a few months. Then
my mind's not going. I didn't get too many chair shots.
No, you didn't get too many chair shots. Then they lost in December 4th of 83 to the Sawyer brothers, Brett and Buzz. They won it back January of 84. Actually, they were awarded the championship when Buzz Sawyer was fired. They lost in May of '84 to King Kong Bundy and the Masked Superstar. Then they were vacated again when the Masked Superstar left, and the Road Warriors beat JYD and Sweet Brown Sugar in a tournament final in May of '84.
I don't even remember them losing to those teams back
I know.
then.
And then '84 they left and went to the AWA.
Yeah, they went to the AWA, but and some of the stuff we're watching now, and I keep forgetting, and because we were talking about it. One of the shows they were now, announced as the AWA World Tag Team Champions on an NWA show, and I remember as a kid that being very confusing,
right? Yep.
Because you didn't realize that Vern Gagne at one time, they did split off from the NWA, and I want to say that Vern, I think, was still a member of the NWA committee, kind of like how Vince was. Vince Senior was, and I think even when Vince Jr. first took over. I was talking about that with a friend of ours the other day. When Vince Jr. took over the WWF, do you remember the first Victory magazine? They actually had a whole piece on Kerry Von Erich defeating Ric Flair for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship.
Correct. So
they did a little bit on that, and then he changed and just went, purely WWF magazine. But it's interesting when you see, them being the AWA Tag Team Champions and then being in the NWA. But they did a lot of that cross promotion type of stuff.
Right.
And AWA, we used to get that on ESPN, so we would see some of the shows and you'd see them on there. But I mostly remember them for their NWA days. And I know that they went over, to the WWF and, but to me, that period of time when they first started in the mid '80s, they were just dominant. There was something like, they were just so different.
Yep. They on August 25th, 1984, they beat the Crusher and Baron von Raschke for the AWA tag team titles. So that was the first of the trilogy. The Road Warriors were brought in by Gagne to work as heels, but again, as usual, the fans love when they squashed a bunch of fucking stiffs, like his kid. They soon became the AWA's top draw throughout '84 and '85, feuding primarily with the Fabulous Ones and later the Freebirds. Then they began splitting their time between the AWA and Crockett, so they were there together. They were there simultaneously while you're watching them now in your timeline. They actually were still in the AWA technically. Yep. They started feuding with the Russians while still holding the AWA belts. At the time, they were co-promoting cards in an effort to compete with the WWF. Hawk and Animal lost the AWA title to Jimmy Garvin and Mr. Electricity Steve Regal on September 29th, 1985, due to the interference of the Freebirds. The Road Warriors' last appearance in the AWA was on April 20th, 1986 at Wrestle Rock, where they defeated the team of Garvin and Michael Hayes in a cage. And I think that's a Comiskey. During their AWA stint is when they started using Black Sabbath's Iron Man. So, wow, the one smart thing Vern did, he let them go out to Iron Man, and now it's fucking cool.
Really? I for some reason, I remember them having it on the 605 show, but maybe it was when they came back.
Maybe. Probably when they were on Crockett after.
Sometimes my timeline gets mixed up. Do you remember when you were a kid, the AWA figures?
Oh yeah, I had. I had
Rick
Martel, and I had Rick Martel. I had a weird combo. I had Ricky Martel. Remember, as Larry Nelson said, Ricky Martel, and Baron von Raschke. I had a combo with the AWA belt, like the little belt.
Yeah, I had a friend that had the ring and the whole deal, and I remember that the Road Warriors had figures. And Ric Flair was in that set.
You know what? I actually had the AWA ring. I think I had the Road Warriors, actually. Now that I think about it. Yeah, I did.
It was so cool because, when you think about it, remember the WWF action figures were those big,
big rubber guys. Yeah.
Rubber guys. And I thought it was so cool to have these figures that actually, the arms moved and,
right.
You could, and then the WWF eventually went to those. But I remember, it was so cool to see Road Warrior figures at the time because they were the best.
My brother always would. He's such a little shit, my brother. He used to go into because he used to have that cool case. He used to open up, like when I was at school or whatever, he would open up the case, he would take the world title belt off my Hogan figure and put it on my Paul Orndorff figure all the time. That fucking sleazebag heel. That's my brother for you. He hated Hogan. Anyway, that's a side story. Yes, I actually had, now that I think about it, I think I had the Road Warriors. I definitely had Rick Martel and Baron von Raschke. Now I'm pretty sure I had the AWA ring. It must not have been expensive. I can't imagine my father buying me that. But
yeah, I mean, but I do remember, and it was so cool it was so, it was so confusing. Again, didn't know all the insides like we know about things today. Like, why was Ric Flair in the AWA set when he was in the NWA?
Because he used to be that was training. Yeah. They would spend 5 years in Japan, but they would be in Crockett at the same time. And then on October 29th, 1988, they won the second of their trilogy, beating the then babyface Midnight Express. At the time, they turned heel. They attacked Sting during a defense of the six-man championship, kind of like what Callum McDougal's going to do to you two shitbags.
Callum is not going to believe it.
Claymore kick you fuckers, and him and Ben Locke and Rory McNamara are going to become the UK six-man tag team champions. I wonder if there was a UK six-man tag team champions.
Probably somewhere.
So, and then they'd be in Crockett for the most part, and they would be involved. I'm looking forward to when you guys get to the summer of '87, when you have those amazing war games, when it was the Four Horsemen. Let's see, '87, it would have been what? Arn, Rick, Tully, and was it Luger? Or was it still Wyndham in '87? No, it was still probably Luger. No, because I think Barry turned heel in '88. I think it was Luger and JJ.
Oh,
and
right. It was Luger.
Yeah. And then it was the Road Warriors, Dusty, Babyface Nikita. Who's the fifth guy? It wasn't Sting. I can't think of who the fifth guy is. Who the fifth guy in the baby. Anyway.
I remember now. But you know what? I mean, I think what people don't remember, and even sometimes I had to remember, that they didn't become NWA Tag Team Champions, like you said, until 1988. Everybody, and to think out of the trilogy, they actually won the AWA World Tag Team Championship first.
Correct.
Again, I think most people think of them as NWA more than AWA. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree, definitely.
But because they were in Crockett they were going back and forth, I think that's, Crockett had a little bit more of the exposure, even though AWA was on ESPN. So, it's just amazing. I mean, they were drawing money. I mean, no matter where they went. And like I say all the time. Think about if they just had somebody that had Vince McMahon's marketing mind. I mean, just even watching the stuff now, I'm like, oh my God, this stuff was so much better than WWF. When I really, really break it down and I look at it, but we were all attracted to that showy, put on the arenas with the bright lights and the way they, the way they shot television, that's what made WWF so enticing to everyone, especially when you're younger. They knew exactly what they were doing. But when you want to go down to a pure wrestling match, I mean, the crowds were just into everything. I mean, I just watched a match today with the Rock and Roll Express and the Russians. It was on TV on Worldwide, and the match was maybe like 40 minutes or something like that. Scott, everybody was in to the whole. I mean, through the whole match, even though there was some slow periods in it, the crowd was into the whole match.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if you'd get that today.
Right.
And the psychology and the way they broke it down. I mean, it was a great match. It's definitely in the top 100 for the GWCW.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's no doubt about that.
But when it comes to Road Warriors, the Road Warriors, they had some good matches, some great matches, but for the most part, they were known for annihilating people, and that's what you wanted to see, and that's what fans like us wanted to see at that time. And they were trendsetters, and they both really, you really thought they were brothers because they really worked that well together.
Yep.
And,
absolutely.
They were announced from Chicago, Illinois, but Joe Laurinaitis was actually born in Philadelphia and, raised in Minnesota. And I believe Mike Hegstrand was actually from Minnesota originally. But, they were announced from Chicago, Illinois, so everybody thinks, they were really from Chicago. Great wrestling city, but...
Correct.
I just, one thing about, Animal, it was, Hawk had that outlandish personality, but Animal was the one that, drove home the promo, like, this is where we're basically just going to annihilate you when you get in the ring with us.
Yep. That's exactly
I mean, I just loved, it's just one of those tag teams that, were you going to get a 5-star match? No, that's just not what they were about.
Right.
They had everything else.
No.
Yeah, and listen, they worked stiff. There was no doubt about it.
I think 5 stars was watching 2 jobbers get their fucking breakfast handed to them behind the woodshed. I think that's 5 stars for me. And then, of course, in my opinion, the greatest tag team finisher of all time, the Doomsday Device. Although the decapitation device of Demolition, as well as the heart attack of the Heart Foundation, also good finishers too. But the Doomsday Device is the greatest tag team finisher.
The heart attack from the Heart Foundation is my second favorite.
They're all good. I know you have a thing for Demolition. So after winning the titles, and then turning on Dusty, got Dusty kicked to the WWF after they stuck the spike in his fucking eye, which was pretty cool. In June of 1990, they finally make their way to New York and the World Wrestling Federation. Now, here's what Wikipedia says. We talk about why Vince dumped the Road Warriors name and they became the Legion of Doom. According to Vince, it's because there was the Ultimate Warrior and Kerry Von Erich, the modern-day Warrior, even though they really didn't call him that. So it was probably more the Ultimate Warrior. It's kind of why Steve Austin went with Steve Austin and not Steve Williams, because there was already Dr. Death. So,
well, he was, and Vince has always been funny about that. That's... they made Shane Helms change his name to Gregory Helms.
Yep.
Because of Shane McMahon. So he's always done things like that. I mean, Legion of Doom's a great name. Don't get me wrong. That was the faction they were a part of. But I don't know. They just were not the same to me. I mean, I know they did have some good matches with Demolition. Don't get me wrong. They did have some good matches in the WWF, but I don't know. There's just certain people that just, they were known for being in a certain company, and they were just NWA guys. That's just...
Oh, are you stunned? The Road Warriors left. The Road Warriors left WCW because they were pissed off at Jim Herd. Are you shocked?
Oh, that's something new.
Yeah. So... And, of course, at SummerSlam 1991 at Madison Square Garden, they would defeat the Nasty Boys and would officially become the first team to ever win the NWA, AWA, and the WWF Tag Team Champ. The Triple Crown of the 80s. Of course, that would be matched by the Dudleys, who would win the ECW, WCW, and WWF Tag Team belts. And then, of course, they would eventually make it 4 when they would win TNA as well. Then this is where things went downhill. They would leave briefly after losing in February of 92 to Money Inc. They lost the tag titles to DiBiase and IRS. Would come back at WrestleMania 8 with Paul Ellering. And then they introduced Rocco. By the way, from what I'm reading here, they did a TV segment. His original name was Freckles. Apparently the segment bombed so badly, it never aired. Wow. Couldn't believe that. I was furious when I saw that. And then to see him draped on one of the fucking motorcycles at SummerSlam 92 at Wembley. Really? They're the goddamn Road Warriors, for fuck's sakes. Do they really need a goddamn puppet for inspiration?
I just, some of the
I
stuff.
don't know
I
what the
mean,
fuck they
listen, as great of things that the WWF has produced, some of the things that they did, I just didn't understand. Sometimes you just wonder, is this stuff a rib? I mean,
I know, really.
when you think about it.
So they leave at the tail end of '92 because Hawk got pissed off at the freckles thing. Um, uh, they go to New Japan. They beat the Hellraisers. It was the Hellraisers with Hawk and Kensuke Sasaki, and they would be he would be Power Warrior, and they'd be called the Hellraisers.
Was
it
that Animal was hurt?
Yeah.
Why did I forget what? You know what? He mentioned it on his podcast one time, but I can't remember the whole story there. But I know that he wasn't. Animal was not too thrilled.
Yeah, when Animal came back from his back injury, he joined the duo in Japan in '96. The three were announced collectively as the Road Warriors, and they were still using Iron Man. They go back to WCW in '96, and then, of course, would return triumphantly to the WWF in '97 and would win the tag team titles for the second time. Then they'd bounce around the indie circuit. They would show up on the May 12th, 2003 Raw in a tag match against the then World Tag Team Champions RVD and Kane. And Hawk died on October 19th, 2003. And then we would talk about, Animal and Heidenreich and all that crap, and we're not going to get into that.
When was the stuff with when he was on the Titantron and?
Oh Jesus, that was in '98 with Draws, and he would fucking come up to the ring drunk, and he'd have the motorcycle helmet on. He'd try to do moves, and he'd fall off the ropes, and it was goddamn embarrassing.
As great as the Attitude Era was, there was some things that were just
that was disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. That's Vince Russo going too far. Vince was too worried about feuding with Steve to fucking work to pay attention, but that was disgraceful.
Well, the boss had to sign off on it, so yeah.
That was sickening.
I know Animal was not thrilled with some of that stuff, especially that his friend was going through all that.
Really going through it. It wasn't a joke.
No, it wasn't. And
cock and bull. Absolutely cock and bull. And absolutely disgraceful, that whole thing. That made me sick when I'm watching that again.
And one thing about Animal, listening to his podcast, he's pretty opinionated, and he has things to say about some of the wrestling today, and even his time in the WWF. I mean, he respected Vince McMahon, but some things he obviously didn't agree. He's not sure why he was being kind of blackballed there, but probably because he is very opinionated in what he had to say. But you see the stories, when you see stuff on Twitter and Facebook about how good of a guy. I mean, he truly is, and I know from listening to his podcast, he loved bringing his pads. He was always, fixing up his, spiked pads to bring out so people could take pictures. Sometimes they'll let the fans take pictures with the pads on, and he really truly loved. And listen, we know he was going out there. I mean, this is how some of these guys, kept themselves working. Was through these shows, but he took the time though, so when people did pay for his autograph to make sure he gave them a moment that they would remember, and he loved being with the fans. And what was there was a story, I don't know if I don't want to totally speak out of turn, but I just saw the other day. I guess there was a promoter at one of the shows. He was having a hard time paying all the guys. I don't know if he just didn't do well or whatever. And he gave, his portion of the pay to make sure that everybody else got paid, on the show that he was on. He was just that type of guy behind the scenes. Like, he was always trying to help. He was a great father. I mean, his son James, who played for the Rams most of his NFL career, I know he sent out a tweet, and he was really hurting and was in shock. But they were very close. He was with I want to say he had two sons and a daughter, I believe.
Yes.
And
there's a great picture on Twitter. There's a great picture on Twitter of Animal wearing his son's Rams jersey and James wearing his dad's face paint. He
Yes.
shaved his head like a mohawk and put on the pads. It was pretty cool.
But he was,
Yeah.
he said that, when he had, he was always, it was a very sports oriented family, and always took time to, train his kids, or work out with his kids, and it's sad because he died on his anniversary, his wedding anniversary. As a matter of fact, his last tweet was to say happy anniversary to his wife. And I don't think any more details have come out, besides the fact that I believe they were at some resort in Missouri. His wife called around 10 of midnight on, I want to say it was Tuesday night, I guess.
Well, it was Tuesday night, yeah, because we found out about it on Wednesday morning.
And by the time they arrived, he was already deceased. But
it was rough.
It was a shock because, like I said, I and I think he did a show. I think he does some kind of show for Sportskeeda or something. Reviewing the Raws. I think he did it on Monday night. And like I said, I just listened to his podcast last week, and I know he's excited about going to see Jerry Lawler.
Yeah,
the Jerry Lawler.
Today. If you're listening to this on Saturday, it was tonight. It was supposed to be tonight. If you're listening to it Sunday, it was last night. So, what is your lasting memory for you of the Road Warriors? There.
I think Nikita was a face at the time, so he was, Nikita, and then somebody was Dusty, like that whole crew, and people used to even sign my yearbook. I have it somewhere saying, Animal, that's what they call it. So I just that's how much I loved the Road Warriors, and especially Animal. Animal was my favorite of the two.
Right.
And just remember having that big Crockett Cup poster on my wall. And as now, the kayfabe kind of broke, in the 90s and 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know these guys more on a personal level through podcasts and shoot interviews. It was nice to see a different side and know that that Joe Laurinaitis, who played Animal, even though he was a tough guy, he was a good guy.
Yep.
And the wrestling world lost another good one.
I agree.
And it's that was a tough one. That was a tough one because it came out of nowhere, and he just always seemed full of life, especially on his podcast. But he's always doing some kind of. Even as things started opening up again, he was back being busy. But he always expressed that he could not wait to see the fans.
Yep.
And spray painting his spike, his pads, spike pads. He always wanted to give everybody some kind of enjoyment, and it's kind of one guy I wish I got to meet.
I sadly never got to meet. Yeah, I never got to meet either Road Warrior either. I saw them live a couple times,
right?
But Wolf did. But sadly, no, I never got to see him like at conventions or anything. It's kind of a bummer. For me, it'll always be watching those early Georgias and just seeing guys get just fucking flayed, and then to watch them and to follow them on all the mags. They won PWI. I think named them Tag Team of the Year like 5 times or something. They were in the list, the top 100 tag teams of the quote PWI years. They were of course number 1, and I don't think there's any dispute about that. Yeah. Rest in peace, Animal. And another great
Yep,
guy. Part of
he's
the
he's
paper.
going to be missed, and I know he was really excited too. I guess they re-released through one of the companies, the Buddies, the wrestling Buddies. So they had,
They
I
were
know they made
rare.
a
They
limited
were rare to
edition.
get. Yeah.
Yeah, they made some new ones that he was talking
Oh.
about on his podcast. I have to look them up somewhere, but he was excited, and I know, what he was talking about too. He did a special shirt with Thunder Rosa,
Oh.
so she could sell, to help her out, so they did like a picture together, and then they did a shirt, I think, on Pro Wrestling Tees.
And to honor him, Wednesday night on Dynamite, she actually did her half, instead of her normal half face paint, she actually did she did like the spider and the same kind of white red color combo that Animal has. So she honored Animal on Wednesday night on AEW Dynamite, which was very cool.
Yeah, he was speaking very highly of her and wanted to help her out. So he did a picture with her, because it was one of the indie shows or whatever. They kind of became friendly, and so they did that. And again, he was always looking to help everybody out. Always looking to, he always said, people want my advice. I'll try to help them out, because listen, he knew that people helped he and Hawk out when they were starting out. That pay it forward. And that's what he tried to do. And I think he would have been valuable to WWF, AEW, Ring of Honor, or whoever wanted to use him as an agent, because he, even though, like you said, he wasn't going to give you a 5-star match, but he understood the business, and he was very successful. And the Road Warriors, again, I mean, they made a lot of money in their day, and they did go to WWF eventually in 1990. But think about if they had Vince's marketing machine back when they were really hot in the 80s. Wow. I mean, I think they did okay in WWF, don't get me wrong.
They could have had I know you say that a lot, and sadly, they could have probably had the marketing machine if they fucking knew what that even meant. But that's why Vince was different than everybody else. And unfortunately, had Crockett not thrown money away pretending to be the Horseman when he wasn't, they should have had better marketing.
What is what's the pants that they wore? These
Zubaz.
Zubaz. I know they made a lot of money off that, because they were making.
They worked out. They had a licensing agreement with the NFL. You could get you could have gotten red and blue and white Giant Zubaz. I could have got white and blue and silver Cowboy Zubaz. I think they had a licensing deal with the National Football League to do NFL Zubaz pants. I'm pretty sure you could have got Packer green and gold Zubaz pants. It's pretty cool. Raiders had silver and black.
They definitely they were just a unique team that really and don't forget about what that team, what Paul Ellering meant to them.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Paul Ellering truly was a manager. I know they always use that term loosely in the wrestling business, to gain the heat and do all that kind of stuff when it came to wrestling. But he was the one that booked the hotels, booked the rental cars, and he loved them and they loved him. And,
absolutely. One of the greatest managers of all time, and he only had to manage 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the wrestling world again just took another hit.
Yeah, it did.
And prayers go out to the Laurinaitis family. And I didn't hear. I don't know what his relationship was with his brother, with John.
I don't know.
Recent years.
Not sure. I'm sure they were fine.
Yeah, I didn't hear I meant to look on Twitter to see if he put anything out. But I don't know what their relation. I mean, I never heard him talk negatively about him. Joe speak negatively on his podcast about him. but I don't really know what their relationship was. I mean, I guess at this point it doesn't matter. I just no matter what, our prayers go out to them, and just it was a big loss for the wrestling world, and I know that that how we feel, as friends, how we feel about the Road Warriors. And there might be some other people that don't think that they're the greatest tag team. That's another podcast for another day. But
it depends on your taste, sure.
Right.
I mean, they weren't the greatest WWF tag team of all time. I had them on my list, but they were in like the 40s or the low 50s. The Hart Foundation are the greatest WWF tag team of all time. But the Road Warriors are the greatest tag team period of all time. But I did the same thing with my singles list. My number one WWF wrestler of all time is Randy Savage. The greatest wrestler of all time is Ric Flair.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something.
Oh, well, that was a heartbreaker. Matter of fact, JR and I did an episode of the Place to Be podcast because Randy Savage died on a Monday. So we did a tribute episode that night. Anyway, rest in peace, Animal. Definitely that War Games match from '87 should be on your GWCW list because it was a fucking banger. And the WWE Network did not put a playlist up yet. They better do it soon. All right. So there we go. There was our tribute. And if you want to hear a little bit more about the Road Warriors, this week's episode of The Main Event, Nate and Steve gave their opinions on the Road Warriors as well. I kind of tempered mine because I knew you and I were talking mostly about it. So Nate and Steve gave their opinions and their heartfelt tributes to Road Warrior Animal and to the Road Warriors as a team.